Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Fiveable Cram session for AP World History. It's great to see everybody already in the chat, saying hi, talking to each other. Got a little poll to get us started off, as we often do. In my part of the country, it has been gloriously warm and sunny, very hard to feel motivated to study these days. So I'm curious, when you get that first hot sunny day of the year, whether it's in April or June or whenever it happens, are you somebody who likes to go swimming or boating or out on the water? Are you someone who just likes to sit outside, whether it's in the sun or the shade, and enjoy the fact that it's nice out? Are you more of a hiking, biking, sports kind of a person? Or are you the hide inside and wait till the scary sky fire disc goes away? I definitely know some people like that in my life. So as we get started today, let's get your votes. What do you do on the first hot or sunny day of the year? For those of you joining us, if this is your first Fiveable Cram session, welcome. I saw it in the chat that we have some folks here for the first time. Hello, my name is Melissa. I am one of the streamer teachers for AP World History and really excited to be with you all today. Getting some good votes coming in from the poll. I like seeing that. I know that some of you live in parts of the country where it's always hot and sunny and great. And some of you live in parts of the country where it's not going to be hot and sunny for a while yet. So just kind of thinking ahead to that sort of a thing. All right, let's get some results in. Seems like today's crowd is more of a hiking, biking, sports sort of a crowd, as am I. I am in that camp as well. I definitely enjoy getting out and doing something when the weather gets nice, and hopefully before it gets too hot. That's for sure. All right, we are going to jump in with our... There we go, with our slides, because this stream is a little different from the last several streams that we have done. This stream is all about free response questions, so FRQs. In particular, we are looking today at the short answer question. We will be doing a total of 3 streams on FRQs. And this first stream, we're focusing on the short answer question. For the second stream, I'm going to focus on the longer essays. And then Mr. Beckman will be in for the third stream. And we're kind of playing it by ear to see what you all need or want from us to make sure that we're filling that in for the last stream. Before we get going, I want to remind you that the stream is being recorded, so it'll appear on the website, on YouTube, other public channels. Using the chat, your name shows up in chat on the site as we play, but it won't show up in the replay. But if you aren't comfortable with your name appearing in the chat, you can always just change your name and make it a name that you feel comfortable seeing. All right. We are on social media at Think Fiveable. You should definitely be following us there. Fiveable does the best job at like pep talks and encouragement. Our social media team is so great in the run up to exams. So if you are a person who's feeling nervous about your exam, you should definitely be following us on social media because you're going to get a lot of advice and tips and encouragement that hopefully will help you feel a little bit better. All right, we just have a few streams left. We've got today's stream. We have 2 more free response streams, like I mentioned, one on Saturday, the 24th, and one on May 1st. And today I'm talking short answer, but we will definitely talk about the DBQ, and I've got more details about that later in this stream, so fear not. We also have the Cram finale coming up on May 9th. If you haven't heard about our Cram finales, quick rundown. The Cram finale is a 5-hour Cram session the night before the AP World exam. This year we're doing it on the 9th because the first set of students taking the AP exams start on May 10th. So that includes AP World folks. So we will be live there on the 9th for 5 hours, reviewing content, reviewing skills, pepping you up, getting you really ready for your exams. It is Mother's Day. It's also the day before the exam. So, make sure that you show lots of love to any mom type figures in your life. But if you need to study, we will also be here. The Cram finale will also be recorded. So if you need to watch it at a different time than when it is live, we will have that available for you. Fear not. All right, today, we're going to do nuts and bolts with the short answer question. I'm going to give you some features of a quality response, and then we will do a little bit of practice together, a sample prompt and looking at some responses together. So I'm seeing a lot of folks in chat feeling stressed and worried about the longer essays, the DBQ, the LAQ. Those are coming. We've got plans for you. We've got practice for you. It's just so hard in 1 hour to try and do anything meaningful about all 3 free response types. I'm starting with the short answer today, and I'll explain why in just a little bit. I'm also seeing a question in chat about prep after the 9th for those taking a later administration of the AP exam. I know that Fiveable has your back. I don't know all of the plans exactly for how we're going to schedule and do that, but I know we have your back. And if you wanted to not show up for 5 hours on the 9th, you could watch that replay spread out over the next few days as some review for you, getting ready for your later administration of the AP exams. There's lots of good options and choices, and Team Fiveable is going to be here for you on that. The short answer question. Now, there's a couple of things we got to talk about, details, logistics wise, with the short answer question. So I want to give you some info about the short answer question, just so that you know how it fits in to the exam as a whole. There are 3, if you are taking the paper pencil AP World exam, that's administration 1, that's those of you taking the exam on May 10th. So our first administration, you will have 3 short answer questions. Now, some of my students get confused about this. So just to clarify, each question has 3 parts, part A, B, and C. 3 questions means 3 that each have a part A, B, and C. So 9 little chunks of answers that you're going to do. Question 1 is required in that paper pencil exam. It will have a secondary source stimulus. And you can see I've defined that word stimulus on my slide here. A stimulus is just a text, a graph, an image, something that sets up the question. So question 1 is going to have a secondary source. Usually this is a text from a historian writing about some period in history. And you'll have your A, B, and C related to that. Question 2 is also required. And this time it is a primary source stimulus. It may be an image, it may be a second text. It kind of varies from year to year, but it will be something that was created during the time period of the questions that you are being asked for that one. For paper pencil folks, you get a choice between questions 3 and 4. Neither of these questions will have stimulus. Question 3 will be focused on the first half of the course, so 1200 to 1750. Question 4 will be focused on the second half of the course, 1750 to 2001. You get to choose which one you write. Your SAQs have 40 minutes to write all 3 responses. So you can divide up your time however you need to. Typically, I recommend spending a little bit longer on the stimulus-based questions because you have to read and analyze those prompts a little bit longer. And then you'll write a little bit more quickly for whichever one you choose between question 3 and question 4. This is worth 20% of your exam score. I don't think you should stress too much about the percentages or anything. That's just some info from the College Board, so I included it here on the slide. For those of you taking the digital exam, so that's those of you taking the administration 2 or 3, so either late May or early June, there's some important differences for you in terms of your logistics for the AP exam. The first thing you need to know is that there are 2 short answer sections on the digital exam. There's no LEQ on the digital exam, so you'll write your first set of short answer questions right after you take your multiple choice, and you'll write your second set of short answer questions along with your DBQ. The other big difference for my digital exam takers is that there are no choices. Each question is required. You just have to answer the ones that you get. And the College Board has given us a little bit more detail about the structure and format of these questions. All the short answer questions on the digital exam will be stimulus-based. So text, an image, or something else will go along with these SAQs. Your first SAQ section that comes after the multiple choice is 40 minutes long, and you'll answer 3 questions. Question 1 will include a primary source text. Question 2 will include a map stimulus. And question 3 will include a primary source image. So primary source text, map, primary source image, that's the focus for your first set of short answer questions. Your second set of short answer questions you will do with the DBQ. So there's no LEQ on the digital exam, just a DBQ and short answer SAQs. You will get approximately 40 minutes for this second SAQ section, depending on how long you take with your DBQ. The DBQ and the second set of SAQs will happen together, and that's a total of 100 minutes. They estimate that you should spend about 60 minutes on your DBQ, which leaves you about 40 minutes for this, the last 2 short answer questions. This short answer question 1 in that set will have a data set. So there will be a question using a chart, a table, or a graph of some kind, and analyzing the data in that table as part of your responses. And then the last question that you will answer will be a secondary source text. So again, that's a historian writing in present time about something happening in an earlier time period in history. So I haven't seen a lot of detail for digital exams about exactly how things are being broken up. But the testing guide, because I'm seeing questions about orders and how things are working, the testing guide seems to suggest that you'll take your multiple choice section, you'll get a brief pause in between. Paper pencil folks, you'll take your multiple choice section, you'll get a brief pause to exchange some papers. Then you'll go into your first short answer question. And then you'll get a break, and then you get one long chunk of time for your other free response questions, your DBQ and either your LEQ or your second set of SAQs. And we can talk more about this and all the logistics and details in some future sessions. So general tips for the short answer question. Focus on answering the prompt. There are lots of techniques and strategies. I am going to give you one in just a few minutes because it's the one I teach my students that I really like. But none of the techniques and strategies are necessarily better or worse, as long as the answer that you give fully addresses what the prompt asks, you can structure things in a lot of different ways. So as you're comparing notes with friends on Discord or even in your classes at school, people may have some different strategies. As long as you answer the question, your strategy is going to be just fine. You need to answer your SAQs in complete sentences. This is something that I've seen before in reading student work, that sometimes, especially on questions that seem really straightforward, students will give sentence fragments or even like bullet point answers, and that doesn't earn credit. You have to answer in complete sentences. But it's a short answer, so you keep it concise. You do not need to go on and on and on like I tend to do. Last general tip for the short answer is to keep things specific. Don't give a lot of details. Choose one detail that is very specific to help you answer that prompt. Because so many of your prompts, especially for those of you taking the digital exam, because so many prompts will be stimulus-based. I have a couple of specific tips about the stimulus-based short answer questions. And this is based on conversations I've had with readers from the College Board who actually score these short answer questions. Some prompts will relate directly to the stimulus. You might be asked to analyze, for example, an author's purpose or tone in a particular stimulus. So when it's applicable, your answer should relate directly and specifically to the stimulus. Sometimes the questions will be based on the same topic or time period as the stimulus, but will go a little further beyond that. But when the prompt asks you about the stimulus, your answer should be about the stimulus. That said, nearly every prompt you get will require you to bring in outside knowledge beyond what the stimulus states. You won't find the answers to the question itself in the stimulus. You're going to need to bring in your knowledge of world history along with your understanding of the stimulus to answer those questions. And we're going to do an example of this together in just a couple minutes. All right, I know I just told you that techniques and strategies, there's lots of different good ones, but some of you were saying early on that you felt like you really didn't have a grasp on how to answer your short answer questions. So I want to give you my structure and strategy that I teach my students, and I use the acronym ACE because it spells a word and it's really nice and easy to remember. So you can ace your SAQ. The A in ACE is to answer the prompt. Give a clear statement in response to the prompt. Sometimes this A will be the first sentence of your response. Sometimes it will be the first half of a sentence, and you'll carry on into the body of your answer within that first sentence, because these are short answers. But whatever you do, there needs to be a place that you could literally put your finger on in your response and say, this is my answer. I have clearly addressed what the prompt is asking. The C in ACE is to cite specific, relevant evidence. I'm using C, cite. I know it's really about evidence, but having two E's would not have made me a fancy word to help me remember this. So I'm citing, I'm using specific, relevant evidence in my answer to the prompt. I need one example. I don't have to have a bajillion ideas. So don't stress too much about that. And then the E in ACE is where you tie it all together. You expand and explain as needed to connect your A and your C. So how does your evidence connect to your answer to the prompt? This could be a sentence by itself, or again, it could be part of a sentence that also includes your answer or your evidence. All right, and yes, I'm seeing some great people coming into chat with other strategies and techniques for this, right? The TEA, you can do a T, topic evidence analysis. It's the same thing as ACE, whatever it is that's going to make it easy for you to remember. I'm also seeing some questions about the digital exam, and I can answer this one in particular about outside resources and whether or not cameras will need to be on. My understanding of the AP exam is no cameras will be required. You're not going to be supervised via camera because you're taking your test at home, and there's some privacy considerations about that. That said, the College Board then is aware that people testing from home may have access to materials not available to people testing in school. So what the College Board has said, and they've been really pushing this, is that no questions will be able to be answered using a Google search, using notes, or using outside resources. You have to know the information in order to come up with your own answer. So in terms of a cheat sheet, I would say plan not to have anything like that for your exam. What I would do is I might have a piece of scratch paper to write down my ideas as I'm reading the stimulus. And at the top of my scratch paper, I might just write the word ACE. And that would be my cheat sheet. I would write it for myself the morning of my exam, right there on the paper. But I'm not going to have a big cheat sheet that I'm going to try and read or look through, because all that does is use up time that you could be using instead to write your response. Okay, so we're going to try writing a short answer question. So here is the prompt. I put it in a separate document because it has a stimulus-based prompt, and it would be way too long in the chat all by itself. So you should be able to click the link or copy paste the link into a separate tab. It should take you to my Google Doc with the prompt. You're going to write the prompt. You can see on the screen already, I've got a 15-minute timer, and I will drop a second link right now. Boop, there you go. So the prompt is at the first link. The second link is an empty document. If you are willing to share your responses, I would love to talk through some responses, and you can share them anonymously into that doc. But I would love to see some actual student samples and talk through them with you all together tonight in order to compliment you and show you all the things that you are already doing right. So I'm not going to rip it apart and tell you it's terrible. This is a great opportunity to practice. I'm about to start the clock. I'm going to give you 15 minutes to write a response, and I'm really excited to see some of the answers people submit. There we go. All right, everybody. Go ahead and finish the answer that you are writing. I gave you the 15-minute timer just to give some perspective on about how long you have to write your responses for these SAQs. But if you're not 100% finished, you're not in trouble. Just go ahead and finish the answer that you're on. And if you have been writing in your own document, go ahead and copy paste your answers into the response document. Got a couple questions in the chat that I want to respond to. And I want to talk a little bit about time, just to give everybody a chance to finish things off in that response document before we actually look at those examples. So first question, and Natalie's already on it with an answer, but just to say it out loud for folks who can't see the chat watching the replays, the question was asked, when we're answering the SAQ, do we need to show what part of our answer is A, B, or C? Or can we just write it like a mini paragraph? I recommend that you respond part A, part B, part C, separate and clearly labeled. That is going to make your AP reader the happiest. That being said, if you forget, or if you forget to label something, or if your answers kind of blend together, or your formatting or spacing gets off or wonky, your AP readers are trained to look for anywhere in your response that they can award you points. So you don't need to stress about, oh, I have to label my parts. I think labeling your parts is a good idea because it keeps you organized and it makes your reader happy. But if you forget or something else happens when you are writing it, don't stress it. Just write the best answer you can to answer and respond to each part of the question. And we talked a little bit about number of short answer questions and timing a little earlier in the session. But if you joined us a little bit later, on the paper pencil administration 1 of this year's AP World exam, you will have 3 short answer questions and you'll get 40 minutes to respond to those. On the digital exam, you will have 3 SAQs with 40 minutes to answer those, and then an additional 2 short answer questions that go with your DBQ, and you'll have approximately 40 minutes to answer those as well. A note on timing as people are putting their final responses into the document. On a stimulus-based question, I tend to recommend that you plan for 12 to 15 minutes, including the time that you spend reading or analyzing the text or image that goes along with the questions. So in the paper pencil exam, if you took 15 minutes on question 1, which is stimulus-based, 15 minutes on question 2, which is also stimulus-based, that would leave you 10 minutes for your non-stimulus-based question 3. For the digital exam, because you are typing, all 3 questions are stimulus-based, so you may want to err closer on the side of 12 to 13 minutes for each of your SAQs in order to have enough time to analyze the stimulus and answer each of the prompts. These are my guidelines for how long I think you should take. You are allowed to use your 40 minutes in whatever way you think is best. So we have a whole bunch of answers, some of which I got to read as you were typing them, some of which look brand new. So let's take a look at them together. And before we jump into reading some of these and looking at them, I want to say just how proud I am of all of you for diving in and answering a question. You didn't know that you were going to have to actually write a response to a short answer question for today's stream. I sprung that on you as a surprise, and people dove in with gusto and came up with some really great answers. So thank you for your willingness to participate and practice. And for all of the hard work that you just put into this in the last 15 minutes. Y'all are amazing. So let's take a look at some of these. I'm going to be doing quite a bit of scrolling because I'm seeing some of these answers for the first time. I'm not going to be able to respond to every single one, but I want to look at a bunch of them if we can. So we'll focus on Part A, first of all. Part A was the question most closely tied to the stimulus. So you had the quote from Mildred Tao, and you were supposed to answer what was one obstacle to women's participation in economic development in newly independent nations, which was the topic of that text. So this was a good time to connect to the text. And I'm seeing that a lot of people did this. This first person here, right, one obstacle is their lack of access to training. This right here, I'm going to highlight it so you can see it. This is a great A in ACE, right? There's a clear answer to what was the obstacle. Then we've got in the next sentence, in certain sectors such as, I love this, such as, this is evidence. We're seeing someone citing specific evidence, such as the medical field. Technology and education need prior training in order to get a job. This training is not available to women in these developing nations. This is a good, solid answer. I like this. Let's take a look at another. That's a CA. So women were not given the right to vote and pass laws. Without this, there were not many chances for women to create economic change within their own communities and livelihood. Something I really like in this answer right here that I've highlighted is that this person is doing a great job with the explanation, right? Here is a fact that this person knows about women's history in the 20th century. And here's why this fact matters. Now, in newly developing nations, particularly in Africa, as they became independent from their previous status as primarily European colonies, most of these countries did extend the right to vote to women as they became independent. So African women, for example, would have had the right to vote as their countries became independent. So it may not be a totally complete answer relating to this stimulus, but it does a great job of explaining the reasoning behind the answer that was given. I'm going to jump down. I'm, like I said, looking at these in no particular order. I just want to get a few different examples. So let's take this one here. One obstacle to women's participation in economic development of newly independent nations was the limited amount of education and resources provided for them in the workforce. Okay, that's a great answer, particularly connected back to the text. Women have been seen as parents that work from home and meant that it wasn't needed to provide them with education, technology, and other resources in order for them to be able to work. This lack of resources caused women to gain only little ability to work in the Industrial Revolution. I see a couple of things in this answer that I really like. I really like the amount of explanation going on in this answer. I also really appreciate this phrase that women are working from home. This recognition that women are seen as parents who work from home. Instead of saying women didn't work, because women did work. Women work incredibly hard throughout all of world history. And all human beings would have starved to death if women didn't work. You are right to notice, though, that often women's work was focused in a different place in the community than men's work was. I love that you are acknowledging and noticing that. Let me see if I can find. There was one I saw earlier that had some detail I really wanted to address. Okay, this one here does a nice job of bringing in historical detail to support an answer that's related to the text. So this answer A right here. Women were often seen as the caretakers in familial relationships, giving them no place in the workforce or a job that would allow them to participate in efforts to grow and expand the economy. So this is the A in ACE. These limits were often placed on women due to, there's some explanation, their religious status. For example, in states such as India. So this person read the text that was related specifically to African women. And this person saw that the question just asked you about developing nations. And the person said, well, I don't have an example from Africa, but I do have an example from India. And so this person said, I'm going to bring in my example from India because that's the thing I know. This is such a good strategy for your AP World exam. You may get a question that seems like it's all about a topic you're like, we didn't spend a ton of time on African women in my class. What do? You bring in examples and details that you do know about some part of the world that works. So this person brought in the idea that in India, women were given the role as wives and seen as supportive figures to men and their accomplishments. Their continual role as a supportive figure limited the amount of persuasion they had in the formation of economic policies. There's the E. If we're doing my ACE strategy, right? We answered the question in the first sentence. We gave an example in the second sentence. We connected them together with the third sentence. This is beautifully specific. I really like that a lot. Got another person here who is saying, hey, I know that there's a religious connection here. I know that in really conservative places where religion has a lot of restrictions on women, like Saudi Arabia or India, right? I'm going to bring in those examples that I know. These are great. Nice work, people. Oh. This person went a different tactic with their response, and I really like it as well. One obstacle to women's participation in economic development, is that employment and economic participation is an added responsibility to their already full-time responsibilities at home. So this is something that Mildred Tao talks a little bit about or implies in her text. So the person's drawing from the text here. This has been seen during the colonial era in Africa when men migrated to work in industrial jobs, leaving women to take on added responsibilities in agriculture. The dual responsibilities of women in developing countries is similar and is a continuity into the modern era. So this is a person who's building and layering an argument saying, I know this about imperialism and the migration of men, and I know that women took on added responsibilities at home. I can see how that would create an obstacle to women's economic participation. I'm going to build that argument here in 3 tidy sentences. Notice how good these are and how short they are. These don't have to be big, long, drawn-out essays. They can be in just a couple of sentences. You can see people developing answers to these different questions. We are going to look at B and C. I just wanted to scroll down to get to some other examples that I hadn't yet addressed. So question A, lots of really, really good answers. People did a fantastic job. Question B was asking you to explain one way that ideas from Tao's writing were common to women within Africa. And part C asked you to then expand beyond Africa and think about how any of the issues from the stimulus related to concerns or considerations for women around the world. So let's look at some answers that people gave. So Tao's writings are relevant to 20th century Africa because this would have been the century in which decolonization in this area had truly exploded, creating many new independent nations with monetary economies. This situation leaves women to become the primary sources of income and provide for their children. So this person has noticed and remembered something really important about the 20th century in Africa. Tao talks about the transition to a monetary economy, a money-based economy, creating challenges and obstacles for women. This person has remembered that decolonization and independence created these monetary economies within Africa. And so this wasn't just relevant in Tao's homeland, but in Africa in general. So that's a really nice answer right there. Tao's writings address the increased dependence on women in Africa during the 20th century. This was common as men weren't expected to provide for the basic needs of their family, but women were. Generally, these issues were relevant throughout Africa. So this is someone who has understood Tao's text and is drawing from the stimulus into their answer, which is a great job. This person here is noticing, it says Africa was an export economy. So this person has brought in a piece of outside knowledge about African economies, that many economies in Africa were export economies. They were built on exporting raw materials and generally a limited number of types of raw materials, maybe just 1 or 2 specific products that were sold and exported as the foundation of the economy. So this person's bringing in some great vocabulary. I want to see if I can find somebody who's talking specifics in Africa. And this was challenging. If you were like, I had a really hard time with B, sure, I totally get that. Oh, here we go. Here's a lovely one. Within Africa, we can see this in its poorest portion, sub-Saharan Africa, where the percentage of girls outside of school is incredibly high compared to the rest of the world. This comes as a result of poverty and a need for somebody to perform the household tasks. In these societies, women are traditionally bound to the household and aren't given the priority when it comes to spending for schooling. Therefore, many times they never end up going to school. So by talking about sub-Saharan Africa in particular, by talking about the connection between poverty and lack of education, especially for girls, this person is expanding Tao's writings and ideas to think about broader trends in Africa, which is awesome. One thing that, as we're looking at these, one thing that I am seeing is a lot of people for Part C took advantage of the opportunity to talk about countries that they were a lot more familiar with. And again, this is a great strategy when you're like, okay, I struggled with Part B. That was really hard for me. But hey, outside of Africa, that's really broad. So I can think about obstacles that women faced in places I'm much more familiar with. So maybe you know more about women in the United States, and you could talk about trends in Africa that were also true trends for women in the US or Great Britain. Or maybe you spent a lot of time talking about Soviet women in the 20th century and the impact of communism on women in the Soviet Union or in China. And you are bringing in those details and those ideas. Let's see. So this person's talking about China. Let's look at this one. Tao's writings are common to women in countries outside Africa in the 20th century because they address the issues that women and their successes often go unnoticed in society. These unnoticed progressions can be seen in East Asian countries such as China, where in the revolutions and independence movements, women were able to provide freedom to their country by dressing up as men and participating in the war effort. Women were able to play a major role in the development of their country, something seen in Tao's writings, but their roles often went unnoticed as they were under a disguise and worked largely behind the scenes. Without women's efforts in certain independence movements, serving as a provider of freedom and military support, these countries would not have developed, allowing these successes to continually go unnoticed, and it may lead to conflict in the future. This person is talking about capitalism and money. There's a lot of good stuff in here. This person is talking in Africa. Somebody's highlighted this yellow one, maybe hoping that I would see it to point it out. This person's talking about conservative Islamic ideology in northern Nigeria as an example of challenges for women within Africa in particular. Again, seeing a lot of examples about U.S. women, women working or going to work in factories during World War II, but being expected to come back home afterwards. These are all really great examples. I'm sorry we didn't have a chance to go through all of the examples that everybody had because there were a lot of really great ones. And I really, again, really appreciate the effort that people put into answering a question that I just threw at you. And I did not pick an easy one. I picked a challenging question to push you as we get closer and closer to the exam. So this was very, very well done. For our next session, I just want to give you a heads up on something that's coming up. If you go to the event, the Cram event for Saturday, the 24th, in the discussion forum below where the stream would be, I have posted a DBQ prompt. I am also going to drop the link to the prompt directly for you here because you all already have Cram passes, so you don't have to worry about, do you have access or whatever. But on Saturday, I'm going to talk about DBQs and LEQs. And I would love to pre-collect some responses. Partial or complete does not matter to me. I'll take whatever you have time to write. But I wrote a DBQ and I put the prompts on the event. I would love to get your responses in the discussion forum directly on the event. So if you only have time for an intro paragraph with a thesis, we could take a look at that. If you have time for just one body paragraph using some of the documents, we can take a look at that. If you write a whole essay, I probably won't be able to look at your entire essay and give specific feedback on every part, but we can use your response, your essay in Saturday's stream to look again at some specific examples of real student responses and ways that people are effectively answering the kinds of prompts that you will see on the AP exam. The DBQ should have 7 documents. Does the one I posted just now not have 7 documents? Because I wrote one with 7 documents. There will be a DBQ on both the paper pencil and the digital exam. Yes. You can time yourselves if you want to. This really is about collecting responses. So if you have 60 minutes to time yourself and write it, let me double check. You're correct. You're correct, everyone. Yes, I wrote, this is a shorter DBQ. My bad. Anytime before Saturday, you can respond to this. My bad. This is a 5 document. Normally a DBQ would be 7 documents. I wrote this one with 5 because I used it earlier in the year with my students who weren't prepared for a 7 document DBQ. So if you were going to time yourselves, you want to time yourselves 60 minutes, even though it's a shorter DBQ, totally use this. The 60 minutes is fine. Analyze the documents, write your essay. But again, if you only have 30 minutes, why don't you analyze the documents and write as much as you can? And we will take a look at rubrics, strategies, and sample responses on Saturday. Natalie's going to keep the conversation going on Discord here in just a few minutes. But I definitely want to get a quick read from you all. I know I'm running over time. Sorry about that. Quick read on you for future FRQ streams. As Mr. Beckman and I are planning the last 2 streams before the big Cram finale, are you most concerned about the DBQ, about the LEQ? Do you want some more chances to practice and work on the SAQ? Or if we give you a little bit of everything, would that be good as well? Take just a minute to give me a quick vote. While you are doing your votes, again, thank you for your participation, for your questions, for your awesome responses. Keep up this energy. If you are studying and engaging in your classes with the level of energy that you are giving me virtually through this screen, you all are going to be in such fantastic shape for your AP exams. I am feeling great about all of you. All right, votes have slowed down, so I'll just show you kind of where we're at. People are really interested in the DBQ, and some people are like, hey, can we get a little bit more of everything? So I will put this into my plans for Saturday, and I will pass this along to Mr. Beckman for his stream on the 1st. Thank you again for sticking with me today. I appreciate you all, and I will see you in our next session. Have a good one, everybody.